And that's what climate change is about. It is literally, not figuratively, a clear and present danger.
We are in the beginning of a mass extinction.
The ability of CO2 to do the heavy work of creating a climate catastrophe is almost nil at this point.
The price of oil has been artificially elevated to the point of insanity.
That's not how you power a modern industrial system.
The ultimate goal of this renewable energy, plan is to reach the exact same point that we're at now.
You know who's tried that? Germany. 7 straight days of no wind for Germany. Their factories are shutting down.
They really do act like weather didn't happen prior to 1910.
Today is Friday.
Indeed, it is Friday, you anticlimactic little twit. We are going to be doing number 80 in a series of Climate Change Roundtable. Today, it's the climate empire versus the rebellion. And of course, any of you who are climate skeptics, you're part of the rebellion, but you already know this. With us today, we have our usual guest, plus a special guest. We have with us Dr. Willie Soon, who's going to be the topic of the show today. And his recent paper. Also, we have regulars, Linnea and Sterling Burnett, who are going to be providing expert commentary on some of the crazy climate news of the week, plus what Dr. Soon is talking about. But we're going to get to the crazy climate news of the week first. The first piece of crazy climate news is climate change is coming for America's property market. Yes, indeed. It's coming right down out of the skies and jumping right into the insurance industry because everyone in the other side thinks that weather is now climate. That's right. Any weather event is now climate, according to them. And that's why we have to insure against climate. Of course, if you actually are a thinking person, you know that the difference between weather and climate is about 30 years. Weather happens on the short term. Climate happens on the long term. There are no climate catastrophes. There are no climate events. But the media and other entities use this as a tool to market their alarm. So, comments, anybody?
Well, look, you can tell climate is nothing more than the aggregate of weather over a specified period of time for a region. Generally, it's 30 years. And so you can say things like, various extreme weather events, pick your one, are increasing or decreasing over time. And you could say that is due to shifting climate. You can't point to a particular event, but the problem for insurers is they want to basically say everything's act of God and we're not responsible for paying off. They want government to bail them out for paying off for weather events. And so they want to blame climate change. We're not responsible for climate change, so why should we pay for that? That's act of God. That's act of man. So the problem for them is they can't show that extreme weather events are getting worse. Hurricanes aren't trending upward. Tornadoes aren't trending upward. Droughts not trending upward. Any of these things that they might have to pay out for, they're not worsening. So you can't let them off the hook by claiming climate change is causing these things.
Yep, I agree on that 100%. But, it doesn't stop them. It doesn't matter to them whether they are following science or correctness or not. It only matters to them to push the agenda, it seems.
Well, especially on the journalism side, you might be able to corner a climate scientist and get him to admit to a lot of this stuff. But the journalists have no reason to admit to any of it. I mean, that's one of the biggest problems here. And I think even people on the side of the debate that say that climate change is mostly caused by human beings and that, that we have a major crisis looming, I think they should probably police their journalists a little bit more themselves, because it's not making them look good to have these guys run around saying every individual weather event is being caused or increased in intensity by climate change or by human emissions. It's too easy for people to come in and say, show us the proof, and they can't. And then people will take what the journalists say and apply it to climate scientists. And while some of them are saying the same stuff, not all of them are. So I just wanted to add that, is that, it's more of this is the state of science journalism. that we fight every day on climaterealism.com. Good.
Well,
But the insurers, I'm sorry, Willie, go ahead. Then
I thought I'd add something to chime in. Since I've been working on the question of climate on and off, actually nonstop, for over 33 years or so. So I'm qualified. What I have to say is climate worthy in that sense. So I really think that, yes, the confusion of weather and climate is huge. It's indeed a fundamental problem in the climate science era, if you still want to talk about science. Most of these activists, people who has a label of a scientist under their name, are probably just not much of a scientist in a sense, because they just want to propagate the narrative. So when you go against a narrative, for example, when Sterling mentioned about the extreme weather, there was a very significant news. I think most of the audience of this podcast would have known. The paper published in European Journal of Physics by Alimonti, 5 of these Italian scientists, physicists, by the way, got pulled. They really got pulled a week or two ago. And that's really tragedy. There's no reason for it to happen. And they just simply don't like it, because those guys reached the conclusion that when they look at the data themselves, without listening to anyone, including the media, and they couldn't reach the conclusion that even the statistics has been changing. So, I mean, this is really another one of those. And why I mentioned that is because it partly had to also link to, the subject of the paper that we just published last week and things like that.
Yeah, we talked about that paper last week or the week before, and I've written about it. But I want to follow up, because here I don't think we're talking as much about science. These are insurers. They're in it for profit, and they're trying to reduce their cost and make you pay more.
Yeah,
they're only going to cite science that supports their bottom line. It's not about the truth for these guys. Yes. And the problem is, because if you look at the truth, the cause is more people moving to areas and cities expanding in areas that's called the bullseye effect, where natural disasters are already common. And B, they're erecting more and more expensive property and infrastructure there. So it costs more when disaster does strike. But if you look at disaster cost as a percentage of GDP, that's actually trending down. So the insurers don't have a leg to stand on scientifically or even economically. They're just trying to pad their bottom line.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's go to our next crazy climate story. This one here has to do with beer. Beer could run low as climate crisis decimates Europe's barley crops, warns the CEO of Japanese brewer Asahi. Well, once again, it's weather, not climate. Weather happens in the space of a season. It doesn't happen because of climate. Climate, if we were to, let's say at the Heartland Institute, say, because it was cold in Europe all through October, that is completely disproving climate change. The left would go apocalyptic because they would say, well, weather is not climate. Yet here they are in the media saying that because there's been one bad harvest, climate crisis is decimating it. It's the same old stuff, right?
It is, and it doesn't hold water. So we all know it. Look, farming's tough. But it's always been tough.
Right.
Now, but it's always yearly and seasonally. You can even have a good decade, but you can also have a down decade, depending on, as Anthony points out, the weather. But is beer? Look, I used to love beer before I turned diabetic and was told I couldn't drink it. I was a big microbrew aficionado. So I saw this story and I thought, really? Let's talk about some of the things that go into beer. Hops, the main ingredient, hops. Well, it set records for production in 2021, and the previous record for production was in 2019. So,
oh no, climate change is causing hops to grow.
Yeah, so hops isn't suffering. Hops set records for production 5 of the last 7 years. Okay, well, barley production is up. Maybe not in Japan. but barley production worldwide's up. Wheat production, because wheat beer is another beer. Wheat production's up. Rice is an adjunct in some beers. Rice production is up. Any crop you pick during the period of so-called dangerous climate change, the production and the yields for all of these is increasing. So you can't, with a straight face, claim climate change is killing beer, or for that matter, almost any other food.
Right.
Or,
the only thing I could think of, some kind of a brewed product that be linked to climate, would be whiskey if it's aged 30 years, right?
hey, now, because I can't drink beer, if you come after whiskey, now I'm going to take climate change seriously.
All right. Way to go. Cool. All right, let's go to our next crazy climate news of the week. Ravaged by floods and fires, Greece is on the front lines of climate reality. Well, again, it's weather, not climate, folks. They jump right to it. Any abnormal event, any unexpected event, any event that might set a record, it's climate change. The media automatically uses this as their go-to methodology to scare people about climate change, when in fact it's just weather. I mean, look at all the years that Greece did not burn, or floods did not happen. Was that caused by climate change too? Could be. Well, in any event.
We know a lot of the fires over there are not caused by climate change. They're caused by arsonists, right?
Right. Yeah. I saw the news last week or so.
Yeah.
At least 30, a lot, not one or two. I mean, we're talking about 10, 20, 30 arsonists. They all, I don't know, they were in the court system. I saw that reported even by BBC, by the way.
Well, a recent report showed that 80% of the wildfires recently have been caused by arsonists. So maybe it's people seeking more publicity. You got these school shooters who do things for social media attention. I'm wondering if these arsonists are doing the same thing now.
Yeah. So anyway, I want to give all of our viewers a tool for any time that they want to comment and rebut this stuff. Besides that, more than 80% of all wildfires are caused by humans, as opposed to weather or climate change, so to speak. But the big thing about weather versus climate is the time period. And we have a link here, a rebuttal link that's from Climate at a Glance. Go to this and you can cite this because everything is from government agencies and science and so forth and so on. Weather versus climate. There's this great little graphic there from the European Space Agency where they talk about the difference between weather and climate. And as Sterling pointed out earlier in the broadcast, climate is simply the average of weather over 30 years. It is a human construct. It's not something that happens, like out of the sky. It's a statistical construct. And so use this link at Climate at a Glance. Just go there, climateataglance.com, and then you can search under the underlying science category, and you'll be able to get this. And the World Meteorological Organization defines climate as the average weather conditions for a particular location over a long period of time. And the standard is 30 years, right? So use that anytime this topic of, some weather event is caused by climate change, push this. All right, let's go on to our next crazy climate story. Biden uses executive power to create the New Deal style climate corps. Yep. He's making the climate youth. Apparently, they don't see the parallels between what happened in World War II and the Hitler youth. They just didn't see it. But you know what? We're going to have a bunch of kids running around being paid by the government, doing all kinds of crazy things with little or no impact whatsoever on climate. Thoughts?
Well, and I'll pitch in here. I don't think that this is going to stop climate change or anything like that. But, and I also don't think that this is really the federal government's job, but the things that they're doing aren't overly offensive to me, which is like clearing underbrush to prevent the spread of wildfire, building trails and stuff, that kind of thing. I don't see anything wrong with it. I just wish the federal government wasn't doing it.
Well, yeah. There's two problems with it. First, it ain't sanctioned in law. In fact, he tried to get this as part of the Inflation Reduction Act, and Democrats pulled it out. His own party pulled it out, and he signed the bill, so he doesn't have the sanction. So he's going to have to shift funds from other things that are funded under law to this program to get it done. So he's breaking the law to create this Corps. And look, as Linnea said, I don't think it's the federal government's job. I don't want the federal government training smoke jumpers. I don't want high school students or college students being put into to fight wildfires or up on the rooftop installing solar panels. Now, supposedly they'll get the training. So is all the money going to go to training? So none of the things are accomplished? Because if people don't ultimately put solar on their rooftops, you've trained a lot of rooftop installers to compete with current rooftop installers who didn't have no jobs. First, it's against the law. It actually violates what Congress said. And second, I don't want these kids being told that they should be fighting climate change, that, oh, we're going to put you in the climate change fight. This is just more propaganda.
Right. Well, and I didn't even, what you just said brought something else to mind. You know, we look at the stuff that the EPA is supposed to be doing right now, that they are sanctioned to do, which is cleaning up Superfund sites. And I think it was under the Trump administration that most of that got done. Underneath the Obama administration, which is very similar to the Biden administration. I haven't quite seen what kind of numbers Biden has gotten done on Superfund so far. Hopefully it's more than under Obama, because it was dismal considering their focus on environment under that administration. So, you know, why not go train these kids to go clean up Superfund sites? Why not do that? If you're going to have some kind of a core for environmental help.
Oh, by the way,
why not try to do the stuff you're already meant to do?
And by the way, it has a huge equity component, because we all know that climate is very concerned. Weather is very concerned with your race. So let's spend a lot of money on equity stuff in these climate programs. In the end, it's not government's job. It's not going to change climate. It's not going to diminish future temperatures or CO2 levels, as far as I can tell. So talk about wasted funds. I like I said, even if it were sanctioned in law, it would have, you got to have funds. This is not. And so they're going to have to take funds from other places where they're supposed to be doing things. That is now going to be unfunded. And what they'll do is they'll go to the budget. They'll go next year to Congress and say, oh, we need a bigger budget because we got a climate corps and we're not able to complete our other stuff.
I'm not applying for the job, but I wonder who is qualified for this job. I definitely will not apply for that. So thank you. Joe Biden.
Yeah. All right. So let's move on to our final crazy climate news of the week, which isn't so crazy after all. This is from Florida Governor Ron. Oh, wait. Nope, not that. This is the weather. I wanted to go back to the Weather Channel. Go back to the Weather Channel there. Yeah. Sorry about that. We've got this one from our own Jim Lakely at the Heartland Institute, who talks about the absurd hot propaganda that's going on at the Weather Channel. And, we have noted this time and again on climaterealism.com, also on whatsuppwiththat.com. The media, the television media, of which I am still a part, I still do television weather from time to time and have done so for 35 years, is now hotting up their maps. It's happening in the United States. It's happening in Britain. It's happening in Europe. It's happening in Australia. But what's happening is that cooler temperatures, like 70 degrees at International Falls that you see there at the top of that map, are now becoming red.
Red. Yes, they're going to run out of red ink.
Right. Or oranges. That you think Sault Ste. Marie at 66 degrees is warm? Maybe. I don't know. But the point is that it's the same kind of colors that you see elsewhere down like south in Florida and so forth. It's just nuts. They're making the maps hot. And if you scroll further down in this article, you can see a comparison. Like look over there in Seattle, it's cooler at 67, or Cutbank, Montana, 64, and it's still yellow. And even further down, you can see very close relationships between these colors and temperatures that are completely way off. It's just silly.
Well, part of the idiocy of it is you looked at Seattle, 67, Chicago was 67, but it was red. So
Yeah.
167 is yellow, the other 67 is red. And by the way, Texas is hot pink, which ain't
Yeah.
even on the scale.
Right.
I think this is the Weather Channel.
Me, we're not hot pink anywhere. Well,
Yeah, I think the Weather Channel
on, Andy.
was being lazy here, and they mixed their maps, so to speak. I think that what the color map is that we're looking at, I believe what it actually is a anomalies map, and then they put real temperature on top of it.
Yeah, adding on top
That
of
could
it.
be.
That's
That
how
could
And then they
be.
used the wrong scale at the top. They used the scale at the top for normal
point, yeah.
temperature, not for anomalies.
Right.
So
But
they've
further down, we
completely
have
dropped
some
the
other
ball here.
examples from Europe that show that what it was like a couple of years ago versus today. And, here's 2018 or 2017 versus 2022. Look at those temperatures, 20s and 30s degrees centigrade. It went from greens to violent red.
All right, I think we got a new business. We can start how to read a graph, a class, a tutorial, Only maybe $50, and now that'll be fine. People are out of control.
Linnea may well be right that it's anomalies that they're showing, but it's incumbent upon them to get that right. It's not the outside world's job to have the Weather Channel display things correctly. It's their job. And so my suspicion is it may be anomalies, but they portrayed it a certain way because they wanted a certain type of alarm.
Right, but
Having
still, I
worked
can
with a number
confirm
of
that
weather systems.
I have caught US EPA did that, converting an anomaly plot to absolute unit so that, foolish people like us can understand. I mean, that's how I've done that. I mean, many years ago, I caught many times and they keep doing it. So it's just nothing new.
Yeah. Having worked with a number of weather systems at TV stations, I don't think this is an anomaly. I think this is the scale associated with those temperatures, those actual temperatures. But what I think's happened is that the color scale has been adjusted. It's been stretched upward. And as a result, we are seeing temperatures that used to be in the greens turn yellow, oranges, and reds. Because as far as I know, no weather systems that are plotting current temperatures display temperature anomalies. And this is just based on my experience, but I could be wrong. All right, final note here. This is from Governor Ron DeSantis, and this isn't crazy, but this is something practical. DeSantis rolls out an energy policy talking in Texas the other day, and he contends climate change is invoked to create fear. Well, just look at the number of things that we've just talked about. Articles in the news, changing of the colors on weather maps from greens to reds, all of these things. What is the purpose? It looks to me like it's trying to invoke fear. So I think DeSantis is spot on. And, I applaud his effort to try to rein this in and make climate great again.
An interesting thing about this is, of course, DeSantis is running for president against Trump. And almost every policy DeSantis presented were Trump's policies. So he's about going back to the Trump era, where we expedite pipelines, we do more public land production, we get out of the Paris Climate Agreement, which Trump did. The one thing that I liked a lot about DeSantis is he said, "You want to get rid of the Department of Energy." I think we never should have had a Department of Energy. He says he wants to keep the nuclear function. Okay, well, we used to have a nuclear agency as opposed to a Department of Energy. I'm okay with that. But it is interesting, however, as he's talking about production and more domestic energy, he and his state have fought offshore oil consistently at the federal level. He wants offshore oil elsewhere, just like Biden does, but Biden wants it overseas. DeSantis just wants it not on his coast. Right. So it's a little bit hypocritical there.
Okay, so let's get on to the main topic. We've talked about all the crazy and not so crazy climate news. Let's talk about what's been going on with the climate empire bullying the rebellion, of which we are all part of. There's an email was received last week by me and many others from Dr. Soon that talked about the fact that Dr. Gavin Schmidt of NASA GISS has decided to go after Dr. Soon and his colleagues, trying to get FOI information. We have that email. Can we show that? And this this is the paper.
I think the email from Gavin Schmidt to Nat Nikoloff of USDA.
Before
Yeah, that one.
There it is. Thank you. All right. So here's the email. And this is basically Dr. Schmidt from NASA GISS going after, trying to find out what's been said in the creation of this paper. He's using an FOIA, and believe it or not, he requests a fee waiver associated with this request because somehow he's special, whereas the rest of us have to pay for this stuff and we do this. You know, he's requesting a fee waiver because he's special. In any event, the bottom line is here that they're trying to discover, rather than simply taking the path of science, and that is to publish a rebuttal in a scientific journal, they're taking the shortcut of trying to go out and do an end run around this and find out if maybe there might be some dirt. They're trying to find dirt, literally. That's all that's going on here, instead of just simply acting like science. Now, Dr. Soon, this is obviously very surprising. Why do you think Gavin Schmidt is doing this, other than the fact that, as I called him, and he put up on his Twitter page, a despicable cad. He loved that so much, he put it up on his Twitter page.
That title, yes.
There it is. He put it up there. I mean,
but before we discuss what Gavin Schmidt's doing, let's talk about Dr. Soon's paper and what he's attacking.
Right. I think I can give a good background and overview, hopefully not in so long of a minute. We published a paper published in the journal called Climate, end of August. And by today, it's over 36,000 views. And that's extremely rare. And the time in which that Gavin Schmidt was aware of this was, I would say that it was like 15, 20,000 views. So he was a bit alarmed that this thing is going to go viral. Mainly because, of course, he won't agree with the conclusion of the paper. The conclusion of the paper is very simple. It's just saying that IPCC conclusion that is all man-made, is, the observed temperature change is completely not valid and premature. For sure, it's premature. Simply because they were cherry-picking their own temperature curve. They were cherry-picking their own, what you call solar curve. I mean, they picked 1 out of 27 available. I mean, this is like a childish game. We knew that in scientific community, we know that, but then you can see the narrative is completely dominated by United Nations IPCC, right? And then Gavin obviously is trying to defend, after all, by the way, on the FOIA, I do have to mention, he thinks that he's clever, that he used a Columbia University affiliation to write that email, trying to attack this editor that was in charge of this but handling of our paper by the name of Nat Nikoloff from USDA in Colorado. USDA obviously is a government agency. But Gavin Schmidt, we all know, is only known not for his affiliation with Columbia University, but for his role as the director of the NASA Goddard Institute for Space Study in New York. So Gavin Schmidt, it's also being paid by us. By the way, being paid at about $190,000 a year. This was uncovered by Nat Nikoloff himself. And he said that the purpose of his FOIA is that he's trying to catch any government official using official government capacity, doing something nefarious, like handling a scientific paper. I mean, this is completely out of bounds. Not only that, 2 weeks later, somehow, well, not a quote-unquote collusion within Gavin Schmidt and this so-called editor of Scientific American used to write for Bad Feet. His name is Dan Vergano. And exact same sentence, except search term, exact the same. Okay, so you can see they are not very happy. So they want to go after the paper because they couldn't argue the science. And first of all, he published something so-called rebuttal of our paper on his realclimate.org website. And we have replied first time. Okay, a week, actually 3 days after that, he got shocked. Then he put one liner. He said, oh, they didn't address my question. So we realize that something is bad. So we write another rebuttal showing you how the real climate team basically was colluding and trying to put out a lot of this false and disinformation, not misinformation, disinformation, to try to quote unquote discredit all of us, the authorship, the authors, and including even the editor, as you can see. This is a case of a very clear cut, of black and white, that they refuse to engage in the scientific sense and just use this sort of strange strategy. Still, as of today, I would still offer Gavin Schmidt openly to come on this show or anywhere he wants, that we can discuss this. But you know that he probably won't do this. But in any case, Gavin, hello, just to make sure that you know that we are here, we are ready to engage with you. And if you feel like saying something clear, please come on by and tell us that whether you colluded with some of these people or not. Not only that, we realize one more thing. This is behind the scene, but I can say it actually because I don't like to hide anything. Apparently, there's a journalist from the agency Francais, AFP, one of these like Reuters kind of new agency, was coming after us already, asking us 5 questions. Out of that 5 questions, only one that have anything to do with science. Everything is about, are you colluded? Are you climate denier? Are you taking money from fossil fuel money? The usual kind of spiel for Willie Soon. And that's a background story to this.
Dr. Soon, I want to point out something that you said earlier. You said, I challenged Dr. Schmidt to come on the show or anywhere else to debate this. I know he won't, but the invitation is real. Prior to this show, I did send Dr. Schmidt an invitation to this very forum for him to participate, just like you are. And of course, I've heard nothing, which isn't surprising. I remember very vividly a few years ago when Dr. Schmidt was on a program with John Stossel. At the same time, we had our UAH scientist, Dr. Roy Spencer, on talking about climate change. It was a pro and con show. Gavin, being who he is, and being so afraid of a debate, open debate, refused to be on the TV set, on the TV show, with Dr. Spencer. So when Dr. Spencer was there, Gavin stayed off stage and demanded that Dr. Spencer be removed from the stage if he were to speak. I mean, how petty can you be?
You know, I want to put Willie's paper in context. It had more than 30 authors representing 18 countries on 4 continents.
Right.
And the basic conclusion was the urban heat island effect is real and affects our regular temperature measurements. And that if you choose different solar data sets, you get different results. And nowhere in there they say climate's not changing.
Let's show the graph downstairs.
No. And Gavin Schmidt, he has this vanity website that he and 5 or 6 other climate scientists have put together called Real Climate. It's supposed to be climate. Whoa. So those guys have their vanity website, and rather than addressing things in the peer-reviewed literature, they attack people, and then they don't respond when those people respond to their attacks. So they have gone after the journal editor. He was a guest editor. They've gone after him because he's a government official. And I don't think it's actually to even expose his connections. I think it's as a warning. They're trying to have a chilling effect. If you publish something we don't like, as a guest editor, as an editor, as anything else, believe me, we will file FOIA request. We will harass you. Don't do it. See what's happened to this guy as an example. And I think that's what it's really about. It's a chilling.
Well, there's that factor. Plus, there's also the fact that this paper has gotten a lot of attention. We had a picture earlier or a website showing the number of citations and views and so forth and how they were going up dramatically. And it's not just the content of the paper they don't like. They don't like the fact that this paper is getting attention. There are lots of papers out there that are not getting any attention that have similar kinds of conclusions about UHI and about solar and so forth. But Real Climate and Gavin Schmidt is not attacking those because they're not getting any views. What they're basically doing here is trying to suppress the public from seeing this.
Well, that's what happened.
One more important crucial point, if we're talking about the process. Obviously, we're not corrupting anybody. We're just, you have a good idea. You want to write up the paper. You calculate. You do all the results. So we did spend quite a lot of time preparing this paper, by the way. You know immediately that it's not about science because this guy doesn't take even more than one day. They already know the result is wrong, which is really strange. Not only that, please, this process, this particular journal is what you call open access and open review, open everything. The information about the review and all this reply by the author are all open. For God's sake, have a read. I mean, you please tell us what is it that we do that is so bad or things like that. I mean, this is why I think when Anthony called him despicable cat, I mean, that's a good way to say it. I mean, come on, guys, please be serious. After all, I mean, we all wanted the truth and nothing but the truth. Why are you keep playing this sort of game? Calling me names, this and that, calling the editor. I mean, this is nothing to call for. In fact, I don't know why this will continue to be acting so childish, actually. The word is childish.
I think you're wrong, Willie. I don't think they want the truth. They want funding. An alarm gets funding. Right. They want government in more control, and alarm gives government more power, and thus them as influencers more power. I don't think they're in the pursuit of the truth. You talked earlier about the paper that was withdrawn by the European Journal. That's right. What it was. European Journal. Once again, Anthony's spot on right about this. So that paper had been published a year and a half ago. It was out there. Yep. Other 40 or 50 other papers had already cited it. Nobody cared at all about that paper until an Australian politician cited it in a public statement.
Right.
And as soon as he did, suddenly the Australian media took notice, and then AFP, which is Agence France Presse, one of the guys that contacted you, took notice, and the Guardian took notice. And as soon as the media hopped on, that's when Michael Mann and others got involved and had that paper pulled under pressure. So Anthony's exactly right. These papers get published and no one notices them. But as soon as someone does, that's when the reaction has to come.
Right. And this is the same gang of people, Michael Mann, Gavin Schmidt, so forth and so on, who were involved in ClimateGate in a big way. These are the same people that were collaborating behind the scenes, like saying we will keep papers out of the IPCC report somehow. It's the same group of people where their belief system gets in the way of doing actual real science. They're more about bullying now than they are about doing science, because if they were doing science, they would publish a rebuttal. They would publish a rebuttal instead of doing this smear job that Dr. Schmidt is trying to dig up using FOIA and saying other things on the web.
Yes, even in his quasi-criticism that he put on his blog post, this guy, man, he acts so arrogant. I mean, he's not willing to engage with the subject matter of my paper in 2023. He wants to go all the way back to something that I published in 2005, which I don't mind discussing, but come on, guys. That's not the same paper. That's a different topic. I mean, we're not even talking about the right subject. I mean, these people just run around everything and then hopefully something stick. And they are calling us, bad guys. I mean, unbelievable, the amount of abuse. But it is true, Anthony and Sterling, is that they have not had this sort of what you call opposition in a clear manner. But we work on this for a long time to try to be mature about the subject. We study, actually do a little bit work with Anthony also on thermometer station quality. But that is another layer of work that we're going to do in the future. But we're just so busy, so we tackle this problem first. So when we see the conclusion, we just simply write up our report. And we would wish that anybody who have any clear and strong criticism on the work and found some errors or anything, as a scientist, we just say, yes, I mean, you are right or I'm wrong. If I'm right, I cannot keep pretending that I'm wrong, right? So I'm right in that sense. Please tell us. IPCC is the one that make the strong claim that the urban heat island effect could be totally negligible. They make a statement in AR6 2021. Please read it up. They claim that the effect, even in the strongest possible, it can be no more than 10%. Yeah. Just so easily that we can demonstrate that it's at least 40%. So I'm sorry, your number don't seem to fit. So somehow we're supposed to keep quiet about this? Hell no. I'm going to say it. I'm going to write what I can and tell you what I know and publish it, show you how I derive my data. And, if you have anything good to say, please show me what's wrong. That's the state of the problem that we are addressing. Of course, as Sterling has clearly said, they are not so much interested in the science, but sticking to the narrative. Anybody that go against a narrative, you are bound to be the pariah of the system. Like this Patrick Bound kid, right? That published a statement saying that the peer review process is pretty much corrupted in this sense. And then he used to be their hero. Now he's, of course, the public enemy number one. This Patrick Brown person, yeah.
Yeah, so can you show that graph of Soon 2009, the black and white one, a few minutes, just about a minute or so ago?
Yeah, that was showing.
Yeah, there it is, right there. Can you
Make
bring
it
that
big.
up?
Yeah.
Okay, so to the average observer, there's a strong correlation here between Arctic temperatures and solar radiation. I mean, I would say that probably got a confidence level above 90%. Would that be right?
Yes, but I think in this graph, I'm glad that Anthony is a sharp man. He realized, by the way, this graph is my quote unquote secret. If I publish this directly, they will attack me. I put it in the appendix of my formal paper in 2009. Can you guys look at the diamond in the middle, 1940, 1930s, that the two dots? And then you look at another dot in 1890 something. Okay, that dot. Okay.
Right.
I think normal people won't understand this graph. That's why we have to teach a class of reading graph. What I've shown here is basically NASA GIS data set is questionable also. They actually make 1879 and the old publication by Hansen and Lebedev in 1987 and 2009 is the same. But then they lower the 1930s and 40s because the old value was way up there. So they did some kind of artificial adjustment. So make sure that the most current warm period looks so much warmer compared to 1930s and 40s. That is part of the reason why I put out that graph, because I was discussing a different topic in that paper. I was trying to talk about the physical mechanism. We are not interested in statistics as much as after all, I'm a physicist in some sense. I really want to discuss about how it works. I don't really care the politics or the policy or whatsoever. I don't even care about the sun, by the way. It just so happened that the sun fit. So therefore, what am I supposed to do? Hide the evidence? Say it. Just tell people as it is. That's basically my career over 30-some years of studying this issue, trying to learn how does the sun affect the Earth climate system. And we have plenty of evidence to show that, science, you flip the evidence, the statement around to disprove that the sun causes global warming will be impossible, extremely difficult, rather than saying that you have found evidence that the sun affects the climate system. I'm sorry that for this subtle detail, but it is very important to follow the rule of science to the T. That's basically what I'm built about. I don't care about either way, actually. You can have all the policies you want. It's of no interest to me. My interest is that how does it work? Where's the evidence? What is the good quality of the data? In fact, we show that all this artificial temperature adjustment by NOAA, by GIS, are not legitimate. We published a paper 2022 that we show that all their computer adjustment of this data is called homogenization. So look it up. It's completely unreliable and ought to be challenged and ought to be said so. We stated in public paper. I wish that Gavin would spend even a minute of it reading the abstract of our paper that have actually, this one we collaborated with, 10 of 12 of those meteorological agency over Europe. Those guys who own the thermometer history station, the metadata, how each station is monitored, like where do they move the instrument or did they change the instrument, that sort of thing. So we need that information. So we work with all this 12 or so meteorological agency over Europe, from Poland, from Ukraine, from many, many places, to try to come up with that paper. And that paper is very valuable in my humble opinion, and I wish that they would look at it instead of just keep saying that we are right. I don't really care. I don't want to be right. I want to study what is really truthful in this sense. So in that sense, we have plenty of paper. By the way, there's another paper that we published, my team published. It's in AMS, American Meteorological Society. They keep saying that we cannot publish in all these major journals. We did. We always publish in those journals. And we found that there's another problem that is worthy of calling a name of it. We call it urban blending, meaning that because of this homogenization method that they were using, computer algorithm, by the way, rather than looking at the real station history data, the rural station that have a let's say, cool value suddenly become warm because they want to. This is called the urban blending, because the urban effect started to contaminate all the rural station. And then when they produce the data, they always say that the quality, this is the best data to use because you cannot use the raw data. And we show that conclusively for station over all Japan, all United States. And that is very, very significant because these are the two best, quality control station around the world. And
Dr.
I think
Soon?
that this is something that they need to worry about.
Yeah, I have one of the things that you are doing in this paper is correlating solar to surface temperatures, particularly in urban settings. Now, in my study that I did last year, published by the Heartland Institute, Corrupted Climate Stations, we went all over the country again, looking at different stations. Now, one of the most important things about solar versus temperature is the fact that we have increased the infrastructure, not just in the United States, but in the world over time. Over the past 30 years, we've added more concrete, more asphalt, more buildings, more airports, more runways, all this stuff. So here's what happens. During the daytime, solar energy impacts a piece of concrete like you see there and next to a weather station. And if you look at it in infrared, you can see that in the visible light, there's a temperature sensor right there next to a rain gauge on the left. And on the right is an infrared picture I took. This is in Fayetteville, North Carolina. I visited this station. Now, you can see that chunk of concrete there emanating temperature hotter than the surrounding environment. And this happens at night, particularly where that long wave infrared goes up into the air, heats the air near the surface, and causes the overnight low temperature to increase. And this is happening all over. And it's because of the fact that this infrared is being released at night and impacting the sensors. From the concrete is releasing that heat, and it's hitting the sensors, heating the air, and that's heating the sensors up, is causing a bias in climate. We found that if you look at just the rural stations that have not been impacted by this kind of bias, the global warming signal drops to about 50% of what is claimed by NASA guests and others. And so your paper is complementary to that.
I would want to point out two things that Willie said. First, they're going back and adjusting past data based on what? Well, we made it up. We figured out what the difference should be, and so we're adjusting it. Or they're disappearing data, and we've written about this a number of times. Anthony's all over the disappearing data, the Wayback Machine he maintains. I'm holding a bottle of water right here, right? Their blending is like taking bottled water and then me going up and getting a cup of water from the sewage creek, not too far from me, putting them together and saying, oh, it's just as clean. That's just as good. You can go ahead and keep drinking it. No. If you blend bad data with good data, you get bad data. The good data suffers. It doesn't. The bad data doesn't improve. The good data suffers.
Yeah, we demonstrate that in a publication, a real formal one. I mean, it's very good. I mean, in fact, we kind of can guess who the reviewer is. It's Ziki Housefather, which Anthony Watt should be familiar with. I mean, those guys have no say on this because they know that they didn't do the amount of work it takes to produce such an evidence. And we really work extremely hard, by the way. So in this sense, I mean, it's David versus Goliath, but I'll fight them anytime, any day, because I simply care for the truth too much. Because I don't want to deceive myself. On this solar issue, I do want to take a short time to explain. Remember, IPCC only says that we should use only one particular solar radiation estimate. And I want to tell you that the true climate science or solar physics area, we can collect up to 27. We didn't even want to go all the way, so we pick about 27. And in AR5, IPCC used to say that we should use 4 of this. They recommended 4. The AR5 is 2013. So in 2021, guess what happened in AR6? They didn't expand the pool of the data. They actually say that we should only use one. So they get more and more dramatic, or like there will be no dissent possible. And then they keep saying that the rest of the 26 are all already discredited. All this other nonsense, and none of them are anywhere close to a solar physicist or spend 2 hours thinking about the topic. And my God, I've been thinking about this for 30 years, actually. It's a hard problem. They want to turn a very, very difficult problem of measuring the solar irradiance, which means you have to put the radiometer, cavity radiometer, up in space to do this kind of small detection of the changes. And they want to turn that into some cartoon science, which really turned me off a lot, by the way. So if for nothing else, I would just say that their total solar irradiance curve is completely crazy. I mean, no one should use it. Yet they want to make sure that everybody, the whole world, must use only one. Ignore the rest of the 26. And this is how dramatic these people have come. It's so directly opposite of what I know as science. And yet they want to hammer on me, saying that I'm corrupted. The editor in charge, Nat Nicolau from USDA, is corrupted. By the way, this is only his part-time gig. He just happened to say that I wanted to cover a special issue on certain topic and presented the paper to the journal. We don't have anything to do. We didn't corrupt him. You can ask Nat Nicolau yourself. Did we buy him a beer? I don't know. Did he buy me a beer? Nothing. we never even write email to each other before. That's a whole kind of a nonsense that this Gavin Schmidt. They are really projecting. They're actually talking about themselves in some sense. I mean, this is the truest sense of the word. They are behaving. They are accusing us to behave exactly like what they always behave. But I'm always happy-go-lucky. I just do my work. I don't need to talk to too many people. I don't go call up, hey, Nat Nicolau, hey, man, do me a favor, dude. Publish my paper. Crap like this. This is nonsense, actually. I'm not interested in all of this. By the way, do you think I really want to write the paper? Actually, I don't even want to write the paper like this, actually. I knew it's going to be a lot of problem, by the way. I've been through the hockey stick stuff with Michael Mann, the whole bunch of stuff like that on polar bear. I even write 2 papers on polar bear, again accused of being this and that. Because I just want to know what is the important variable controlling polar bear survival, things like that. So many, many areas of sciences that I really do not want to dabble into, but I just simply care for the truth and science too much that I decided that, okay, I have to write some papers after tell them what I found.
Yeah, Dr. Soon, I want to get to a graphic that talks about something Sterling just mentioned about water. I did this graphic back in 2008 to explain the homogenization process that happens with temperature, where the biased data is mixed in with the unbiased data. And I compared it to muddy water, kind of like what Sterling had done with, clean water versus sewage water. And here's the bottom line. So you have these stations here, and they're rated 1 through 5 in terms of their bias, 5 being the worst. So I assigned 5 the muddiest water. So what happens when they're looking at a single station, like in Nevada or northern Alabama? Well, they're homogenizing the data, meaning they are basically making a blended effect of all this other data around it. And so you've got the 1 and the 2 stations, which are mostly clean, which are providing unbiased data mixed in with the dirty water of all these other stations. And this is what's going on. The homogenization process is the reason that the true climate signal is being suppressed.
Yes. I mean, indeed. I mean, I do want to say that, yes, so we did propose an alternative. We say don't ever use any of these homogenized data sets, use the raw data, but pick the rural station only. And then we know, but the problem is that rural stations are very short, and usually very short, 10, 20 years, no more than 50 years. Some stations, of course, cover a long time, but most of the data come from urban. Okay, urban are the data that, in fact, even though urban area of the world cover only 3 to 4% of the world area, but they actually constitute about 80% of all the thermometer records. That's why we gotta not use the urban at all, actually, just remove them completely. I mean, that's a drastic effect. You can see the difference. Even the character, if you add urban in, it looks like it's systematically warming. And then, but if you do only rural, you can see there's some kind of oscillation, warming, cooling. And then I don't think you can show the curve, but we show that this rural data set agree with the sea surface temperature over Northern Hemisphere, agree with the 3-ring proxy, agree with the glacial length record, and it doesn't agree with the urban and rural, the strict kind of warming. I mean, tell me, is that good enough of a hint? And those are independent data sets, by the way. You cannot accuse us for not doing the science, by the way. We have done our homework. That's why we published the paper. And then we just simply said, well, first of all, I don't exclude the fact that we could be wrong. Please, no one is 100% sure. Just tell us what is wrong. That's it. That's the challenge. So let's discuss the topic, because the point is that you cannot keep going this way. Keep going to say that it must be only CO2, it must be only CO2. But then we don't even see the effect of this CO2 on the thermometer record. Yeah. What you're seeing is actually urban warming, really. It's urban and then all this other complication that is quite related, but it is nothing to do with what you call temperature, climate that related to what you call the radiative forcing. Yeah, I mean, this is something that must be changed.
I agree with you that the bad data from these urban biostations should be thrown out because it's not representative of climate change. If this were in a court of law, and this was forensic science, for example, where evidence was presented, and that evidence was corrupted with bias or pollution or whatever it might be, it would get thrown out of court. It really would. Forensic science would throw this kind of data out. Climate science? We'll adjust it. We'll homogenize it. We'll massage it. We can't throw it out.
They're crazy.
Anyway, I want to get to the questions now. We've got a lot of questions from viewers. And so let's get to the questions and see what we've got.
Hey, could I pitch in a question first?
Sure.
I don't want to put you on the spot too badly or anything, Willie, but last week we had a viewer who was very insistent that Gavin, really got you on something on his Twitter page. And so I spent some time today looking over his Twitter, and I found the account or the post. I don't know if Andy has it. I put it in the private chat. That no. I put it in the
what is the context? Chat. I mean,
it's the he plot. I don't really know. That's why I'd like.
No, it's related to the Arctic temperature.
Yes,
yeah.
This one. So I'd like a little bit of context on this and maybe an explanation for where he's wrong or where he's right on this, or if he's misusing this.
Yes. First of all, that is not the subject of the paper, right? I told you that he insists that you must go back to 2005. Okay. This is a graph. Okay. He actually, when he made this graph, he also proved the point of what we do. Okay. We are trying to say that, first of all, his temperature curve, that curve that look, this is the Arctic temperature curve. Look at the end of it. I wouldn't trust this curve, especially the end of it. So we need to work on it. One cannot say that the whole Arctic over 60 north to 90 north is totally not contaminated by some kind of effect. We know, for example, the temperature data from for Salzburg, for example, Salzburg, northern Norway, right? It's actually from the airport itself. So I don't know if Gies has already removed that effects. Things like that. He just trying to be clever to say that, look, Willie Soon, he completely gotcha, because you know what? When I use his curve and then the modern update, this is another problem. The solar irradiance curve? I mentioned that you have 27 different versions of it. This is something that need to work on. It's also related to how the modern satellite measurement from 79 to now, okay, if there's a way I can show the graph, is that there are about 20 instruments been put up in space. You put that all these 20s, the values are all over the place. Okay? And so it's a technical scientific problem, yes. This is not a gotcha. I'm fully aware of all of this, by the way. So that's the context of this paper is different. The context of this paper is that we're trying to study the relationship between the Northern Hemisphere, not Arctic, versus the irradiance estimate that IPCC recommended. That's basically what it is.
Yeah, well, I mean...
by the way, we addressed that in our, our blog, our own post.
Yeah.
On this particular point, yes, we have that, and he continued to ignore it. Obviously,
in the end, Schmidt says he's attacking the recent paper.
Yeah, this one.
What he's doing.
I want to show the satellite.
A much older paper that covers different territory.
This is the state of the science. Each of the project, by the way, if you want to count money, if the project costs at least $200, $300, or $400 million, okay? Each of these measurements is very, very expensive. But it tells you that this is the problem of solar physics. People like Gavin Schmidt, please don't call him solar physicist, or else it will be an insult to the word the sun, right? He doesn't do anything on the sun. He can call himself a director or expert or this and that, but he's not. The problem is there's a serious problem of how you combine this together. We actually have a paper now that we're working on that trying to reconcile this whole topic, by the way. So one step at a time. So don't worry. Let them say that I'm dead and all that and so on and so forth. A few more months later, we probably publish a paper and then we explain what we know. That's all I can tell you. Because it is a hard subject that they turn into cartoon sign, trying to use two curves, one red, one black. So make sure you know the red and the color at least so you can tell it's different. That's basically they want to sell to the public. They want to think that science is so easy that you just have to look at these two colors and then all you need to do is, like exaggerating the temperature hot to be extremely like 64 degrees is red, right? That's crazy, guys. Anyway, that's basically what it is. I think or else it'll be too long to explain.
Okay, so we have another question, this one from a viewer, and this is from Douglas Pollock. He says, hi, Willie, do you agree that the solar cycle 25 has already broken the downward trend greater than cycle 24 and that we would be entering a warm period again? First, I want to point out something. Sunspots do not necessarily correlate to temperatures on Earth. Lots and lots and lots of people have looked at this. It has to do with solar radiation. That's the most important thing. Right. And yes, there is some correlation between reduced solar radiation and sunspots, but sunspots are not necessarily an indicator of warming or cooling.
Yes, we're in total agreement. I disagree, Pollock. No, these are just another one of those people, they're all rushing. I mean, the thing is happening now. By the way, the sun has undergone, sunspot cycle has rising up now, actually near the peak of the cycle 25. It came on cycle 24, which is very low. And then a lot of these activists who trying to say now they already declare winner. By the way, the sun stayed during the maximum for at least 2 to 3 years, actually, and then there could be double peaks and things like that. No, I would say absolutely not yet. I mean, they are just exaggerating and trying to rush because just because you can watch the sun every day doesn't mean that we already have all the scorecard in. You know, this is not even half point of the data of the football game yet. You know, and these people is concluding is the answer. No, absolutely not yet.
Gary R55 asked, where was the influence of cosmic rays during the million years of glaciation? Well, I don't think we can answer that because we don't have any cosmic ray data back that far. I think we've got cosmic ray data back maybe 50 years, something like that.
Yes, 50, yes, correct. During John Simpson's University of Chicago built the instrument, neutron monitor, yes.
All right, next question. Let's see what we've got here. Chris Shattuck asked, Willie, tell us about the joint Connolly data, RE the tropopause. I'm not sure I understand that, but maybe
yes, it's a separate issue. Yes, that's a subject that we're working on, studying the radiosonde and balloon data to try to determine atmospheric physics from database rather than any theory at all. So we'll throw every textbook out of the book and just study the atmosphere as it is, because we recently make a super advance. We are able to deduce not only the temperature and all that, we're able to deduce the actual mass flux within the atmosphere using a concept in chemistry where we can actually study whether the so-called Hadley circulation, how does it work? Is it there? Is it not there? So things like that. We have published paper on that, so yet to be determined, obviously.
All right. We have any other questions from viewers here that we can pop up? Kevin Burke asks, curious about the sun's magnetosphere changing cosmic ray flux affecting albedo. Let me just do a brief introduction to that before Dr. Soon responds. The sun's magnetosphere acts like, well, you know, if you watch Star Trek, a force field. It deflects cosmic rays when it's strong. And when it's not so strong, it tends to allow more cosmic rays in. And the theory is that with more cosmic rays coming into Earth, we have more seeds for cloud, because it's well known and established in science that cosmic rays, as they go through Earth's atmosphere, can create cloud nuclei, which allows more clouds to form. And with more clouds, therefore, we see cooler temperatures because more of the radiation from the sun is reflected back into space. And now for you, Willie.
Okay, well, I kind of reluctant to get into this debate because, by the way, I thought about this for a very long time, as early as 1995, 96, when Henrik Svensmark and my good friend Egil Fritz Christensen have published a paper talking about topic like this. My basic conclusion is that this physical effect is interesting, this suggestion, and you clearly can prove it on a very small scale, but for the whole global or even a patch of the sky that you look out your window, I'm not certain that this effect is very dominant and real. This is unfortunately, I think it's all on the level of statistics, not yet physics. I mean, there are a lot of talks about trying to elevate it to some kind of physical way, discussing about how cosmic ray can modulate the thing. I don't think the evidence is strong. It's not there. I mean, I disagree with Henrik Svensmark, but science is all about that, right? For me, the evidence was not there because the cloud data are extremely hard to acquire. We don't even have that much of a cloud data that worthy of long enough to study, let's say, last 50 years, by the way. We don't even have that.
Yeah. Okay. So I think we're finished. One more question. Okay. Can this ridiculous mess and confusion that Western countries are in regarding weather ever be sorted by anything other than trying to change the government at election time?
It's a question for Sterling. Come on.
Well, I guess my answer is no. Politicians aren't scientists, and scientists shouldn't be politicians, or at least when they speak for science, they shouldn't be speaking for politics. If they want to run for office, that's fine. But science should go where it goes. It shouldn't take some normative position that we know what we ought to do. That is for individuals to decide. And if it rises to the level of, affecting masses of people, then politicians to decide or make determinations. And you got to have the right people changing policy if you want to get away from this, because it's not driven by science, it's driven by politics.
Right.
Yep. So there's the music, and that music means our time is up here on Climate Change Roundtable. I want to thank Dr. Willie Soon for joining us today and talking about his paper and the bullying that's going on associated with it. And of course, I want to thank Linnea and Sterling Burnett for joining in with our expert commentary. I want to remind everyone to come visit climateataglance.com, where we have rebuttals to specific climate questions that are factually written and factually referenced. Also visit climaterealism.com on a regular basis, where we take down the crazy media stories about climate every day. And of course, you can visit whatsupwiththat.com, my website. And there's also energyattaglance.com, which Linnea operates, talking about facts related to energy and energy production. So I want to say thank you again. I'm Anthony Watts of the Heartland Institute, Senior Fellow for Environment and Climate, wishing you all a great Friday and a wonderful weekend. Bye-bye.
How dare you!